Often when we're thinking about the next chapter of our lives in our 50s and 60s, our focus primarily is on the practical. Have I got enough money? What do I need to do to move from my current occupation to the one I want to do, or retirement, if that works for you? But here's the thing. Retirement, or what happens next, is so often not an outer game. It's not about the practicalities of day-to-day life. It's about mindset. It's about emotions. It's about thinking about stuff that provides us with a different perspective so that we can internally, mentally manage the transition better. And in this video, I want to give you 3 videos that we've shared on What Happens Next before, all about making that transition easier for you, particularly if you're watching this just after we publish here. Think heading into 2026 and thinking about the next chapter of your life. Welcome to What Happens Next. Now, often we try and think about the practical elements of what happens next and the practical actions you can take to navigate the next chapter of your life. But what we've realised quite a lot, having conversations with so many people who are transitioning into the next chapter, is often the process of working towards managing change is as much an internal game as it is an external one. So in this video, I'm going to share 3 videos that we've recorded before, all about the internal journey you need to go through and the steps you might want to consider to reframe the next chapter of your life. In the first video, I take inspiration from philosophy, talk about why change is so good for you, even when it's scary, and why mindset matters so much when we're thinking about our next chapter. Run the tape. If there's one thing I know, both in my own life and working with my clients, is that change can be bloody scary. As humans, we often try to maintain the status quo and stick with what we know. I didn't really intentionally mean that to rhyme. That's because we're worried about loss. Now, when it comes to loss, regardless of who you are, retirement is a big part of our lives where we lose certain aspects. Not only can we lose our income, we can also lose our sense of identity and purpose. But what if I told you modern day thinkers and ancient Western and Eastern philosophers all have a particular insight into how to cope with this change? And in this video, I'm going to explain 2 perspectives and 3 actions you should consider taking to live the best retirement you can. So in this video, I want to talk about 1 Stoic philosophy and 1 Taoist philosophy, one from Western background and one from Eastern background, that might help you live the life that you want, particularly if you're coming up to a change in your life where you're thinking about either retirement or the next chapter in your life. Now, who am I to speak about this stuff? My name's Chris Daems. I'm a chartered financial planner, and for 20 years I've been helping people from a financial aspect make sure they've got the financial assets that are going to help them live worry-free through that next chapter of their lives. But what I've realised, particularly over the last few years, I've been doing hundreds of hours of reading, interviewing experts, and thinking about this particular subject, is retirement as a concept, because of the fundamental change to how we've lived our life in the last chapter, can be particularly hard. And what I want to do today is explore some of those concepts that are going to help you think about retirement in a different way and support you to live the life you want in this next chapter. And I want to start with the Stoic principle of amor fati, to love one's fate. You see, the Stoics believed that you had 2 things in your control. Number 1, the actions you could take, but also how you thought about particular change. And actually, amor fati is about making sure that we perceive both good luck and bad luck in a way that allows us to move forward and live our lives more sensibly. Because retirement is often a period of times where we lose things. However, using the opportunity to reframe retirement and embrace its change, the fact that we've got all this extra time we get to have to do what we really want is really important and links back to perceiving that retirement in a different way. Now, on this channel, I talk a lot about what happens next instead of retirement. And I get that retirement is the popular phrase that most people use. But often, it's a disempowering phrase. To retire to what? Actually, in these chapters of many of my clients' lives, and certainly yours, there's an opportunity in retirement to actually spend your time doing what you want. We're on a real mission with What Happens Next to help you and people like you plan and prepare for retirement or that next chapter of your life in the most successful way possible. And there's a few things that I'd love to do to help you do that better. Firstly, on the What Happens Next website, you can find www.whathappensnext.life. We've got a range of free resources that you can get access to today to help you, including our quiz, but also joining the What Happens Next inner circle that allows you to get access to new videos when they immediately come out and sign up for the waiting list for the What Happens Next book. You can find a link to everything we're talking about in the comments, or you can click on this QR code with your phone and it'll send you straight to the What Happens Next website. And also, I'd love to ask a favour. If you've got value out of this video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, because that allows us to continue to build our audience and help people plan and prepare for their retirement and what happens next in a better way possible. Thank you. And the Taoists used to say something very similar. There's a story of a Chinese farmer in Taoist philosophy where a Chinese farmer owned a horse, and one day that horse ran away, and all the villagers around this guy's farm said, "What terrible luck that this horse has run away." A few days later, the horse came back, and he was followed by 10 wild horses. So the farmer one day owned one horse, and suddenly he owned 11. And the villagers said, "What amazing luck. You've actually now got 11 horses instead of the one." Farmer just smiled and said, "We'll see." The following day, the farmer's son was riding one of the wild horses and broke his leg. He got kicked off and broke his leg. And all the villagers said, "Oh, what terrible luck. Your son's been injured." Farmer just smiled and said, "We'll see." The following day, the army came and they were looking for young men to fight in a war. And the farmer's son couldn't fight because of his broken leg, so they didn't take him. And at that point, the villagers said, "How lucky for your son." And the farmer just smiled for the last time and said, "We'll see." And we all make judgments about certain things that happen in both our and other people's lives. We perceive certain events, including retirement or redundancy or change, as good or bad. The reality is both the Stoics and the Taoists used to talk about accepting what is and looking at the positive action we can take towards the goals we want to achieve in our life. Because the reality is the events we can't control often. What we can control is both our attitude and action towards those events. By passing judgment too early, we might find ourselves stuck with a perspective about retirement or what happens next in our life that doesn't serve us, stuck with a point of view that doesn't help us, and stuck in a rut we can't get out of because whatever we try, because of our perspective often, doesn't work. Now, I haven't got the answers for this one, but there's a few things that I want to share, 3 actually, that might benefit you when you're thinking about what happens next, particularly if you feel stuck in a bit of a rut. Number one is ask yourself George Kinder's 3 questions. Now, I believe there's a bunch of useful questions we can ask ourselves when we're thinking about our next chapter of our lives. And I think 3 of the most powerful were coined by an amazing gentleman, an American financial planner and life planner called George Kinder. Now, I had recorded an interview with George. It's about an hour long. That's super insightful and will give you definite insights into thinking about your retirement and what happens next in a different way. But he's got 3 questions that he asks that can help you find the next stage in your life in a way that works for you. First one is, imagine today you're financially secure. You've got enough money in the world to take care of all of your needs today and all of your needs in the future. How would you live your life? What would you change? Don't hold back on that vision of your future. Like, describe that life like it's richly yours. That's question 1. And it's designed to help you imagine your ideal life without any financial worries. The next question involves a visit to a doctor who says that you've got 7 years to live. And the good part is the 7 years will be lived in perfect health. You won't have any health issues at all, but you will pass away in 7 years' time. What are you doing with that time? Will you change your life in terms of what you do, and how will you do it? And the idea of that question is to really focus on what you want to do with a finite amount of time left. We all know that we've got a finite amount of time, and often when we're thinking about our future, it feels like we've got all the time in the world. My clients who are older tell me that time goes quick. So asking you that finite question and saying, if you knew you had limited time, what would you do with it, is really important. Next, imagine that the doctor phones you back up and says, I've made a big mistake actually. It's not 7 years left. You're going to die tomorrow. What would you regret? What would you wish you'd finished or done and been? This question is about thinking about what you'd regret if you knew the end was imminent. And that might highlight the actions you might want to take sooner rather than later. The challenge we've got, and this comes to the action you can take as my number 2, is finding the time and headspace to work out the answers to these questions, because they're not easy questions to ask yourself. And finding a route to make sure that you can do it is a really important thing to do. And that's why my tip number 2 is to journal. Now, I've talked in previous videos about the power of journaling. I find it a really cathartic thing to do, but also a real insight into what I truly believe about a particular subject. The weird thing I find about journaling is that I'm brutally honest with myself at times when I journal. And that honesty allows me to have real insights about what I want, so I can make really important decisions about my own life. The third action you should consider taking, and this is from my favourite TED Talk and one of my favourite books on navigating change, Design Your Life by Bill Burnett, is incremental improvement. There's loads of academic research that talks about the positive power of lifelong learning and positive incremental change. From the research on growth mindset and the incredible science behind neuroplasticity, we know that incremental improvement and constant learning throughout our lives is a thing that makes us happier and healthier. The reality is that when we make knee-jerk decisions in our life, instead of learning from the Chinese farmer or the Stoic philosophy of embracing fate, whatever happens, it negatively impacts our happiness. Instead of this fixed mindset approach, having a growth mindset and a curious perspective on the world leans into lifelong learning and will help you lead that happier, healthier life that I imagine you definitely want in this next chapter. So the Stoics and the Taoists agreed. Embracing our fate, good and bad, and living a life where we focus on our attitude to the world, but also what we can control, both in the highlights and the lowlights of our lives, allows us to navigate those changes more successfully. What it also allows us to do is make positive incremental change in all areas of our well-being, including our work, our health, and our money. Now, I talked about the interview I did with George, and you can find that right here. And in this video, I talk about the Stoic philosophies you can learn from that's going to benefit your what happens next or retirement today. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you on the channel soon. Hopefully that was useful. And in the next one, I want to talk about dementia, because as we age, a lot of us think about maintaining our mental well-being. And there's one really surprising way you can make sure that your mental well-being is as close to being maintained in a way that helps you as possible. It's so simple and so surprising, I think you're going to be shocked. Run the tape. Often we're told we have no ability to control whether we suffer from a neurodegenerative disease like dementia. It's pot luck. Dementia is ultimately, we're told, down to our genetics, family history, and some random biological factors. And actually, there is a massive impact of those measures having an impact on whether we suffer from dementia or not. But what if I told you that something completely free with no side effects could reduce your risk of dementia by 28%? No expensive medications, no complicated regimes, just something you can start working and applying in your life today. I'm talking about having a sense of purpose. And before you dismiss this as something airy-fairy, I want to share with you a groundbreaking study published really recently, October 2025, that followed 14,000 people for nearly 15 years. The results are remarkable, and they could change how you take and spend your time, particularly if you're in your 50s and 60s and thinking about the next chapter of your life. By the end of this video, you'll discover why purpose is so fundamentally important for not only well-being, but also to protect ourselves from neurodegenerative disease, and the practical steps you can take to get more purpose in your life today. For many of us, dementia is scary. It's one of those diseases which we can't control. And I know when I look at my own life, the fear of forgetting the people I love, losing my independence, and feeling we're disappearing from our own lives is certainly a scary prospect. And the statistics are really sobering. Cases of dementia are expected to double in the coming decades. If you're in your 50s or 60s or beyond, you've probably been through the experience, I know that I have, of watching somebody you care about struggle with that cognitive decline. Maybe for you it was a parent, friend or colleague. For me it was a member of my family, but also a couple of clients. And it does make you wonder, what would I do if this happened to me? For years we've been told that suffering from neurodegenerative diseases like dementia is in the main genetic. It's just bad luck. It's an inevitable part for some of us based on our genes of aging. But what if that's not the entire picture? What if there's something within our control, something profoundly simple yet powerful we could do to significantly lower our risk of cognitive decline? And it's interesting because in October 2025, researchers from the University of California published an article in the American Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry that explained and dug into something really interesting: the relationship between having purpose in our life and the risk of developing cognitive decline. Now, this study was both deep and wide in the research it conducted. The researchers followed 13,765 people age 45 and older, for an average of 8 years, but some of them being studied for as long as 15. And here's what they discovered. People with a higher sense of purpose in life had a 28% lower risk of developing cognitive impairment compared with a lower sense of purpose. Let that sink in for a minute. 28% less risk based on this research. That's pretty significant. But here's what made for me, the research a lot more interesting. This protective effect held true regardless of sex, age, race, education level, and even mental health. It didn't matter if you were 50 or 80. It didn't matter your background. Purpose protected cognitive decline across the board. Now, the interesting thing is that sense of purpose isn't the only part of the puzzle. We know that there's a genetic link between Alzheimer's, dementia, and other cognitive decline diseases. And there's one specific gene, the APOE4 gene, which has a direct link between the Alzheimer's disease and the likelihood of you receiving it. But interestingly, having purpose in our lives also protected people with this gene. In other words, you can have a significant genetic predisposition towards Alzheimer's disease and still have a strong sense of purpose that will give you some protection. The researchers also, interestingly, found that people with higher purpose not only had lower risk, but when cognitive problems did appear, they appeared later. That's extra years of mental clarity and independence by finding purpose in your life. Now, I know that when I first read this research, part of me had a cynical look at the research because I was wondering how something as airy-fairy, as intangible as finding meaning and purpose in our life can have a direct impact on reducing cognitive decline. The interesting thing is there's plenty of science saying it does. But it's probably worth starting by understanding what the researchers meant when they were talking about purpose in life. Because in this study, the measured purpose was by asking questions like, do you feel your life has direction? Do you have goals which give your days meaning? And do you feel like what you do has a positive impact and matters? Because this isn't about having grand ambitions and achieving this massive purpose or even leaving a legacy. It's about waking up every day with a reason to do so, finding something that matters today and it's important to you. Studies using brain imaging have found that people with purpose show greater connectivity in the neural networks involved in memory, planning and self-awareness. The brain stays more integrated and resilient against age-related changes if we've got purpose, because it's just working. Also, the research shows that people who have a degree of purpose are more likely to do stuff that's just healthier for their brain. They exercise more, they sleep better, they stay more socially connected, they learn new things, and they avoid, on the whole, more harmful behaviours like excessive drinking or smoking. These behaviours compound over time and improve your cognitive function. Purpose is also associated with better health anyway, because stress reduces when you've got purpose. You've got reduced inflammation in the body, and you tend to have better blood sugar and blood pressure control when you've got meaning in your life. And these are all factors that can have a positive contribution to brain health. So then the big question becomes, how do we cultivate this sense of purpose? If we are thinking about what happens next chapter of our lives, or approaching it, and the evidence says that purpose is really important, how do we replace it when we had it at work, and then potentially when we move into the next chapter of our lives, it suddenly disappears? And the good news is purpose doesn't require dramatic change. You don't need to start a business, write a best-selling book, or take on a full-time second career, unless that genuinely floats your boat and that's something you want to do. Because purpose is deeply personal. I've seen it in clients who look after their grandkids and they find purpose in that. I've seen clients who consult at work and keep their hand in intellectually and occupationally. I've seen it in clients who act as trustees for charities. Finding your sense of purpose, your deeply unique sense of purpose, is about doing what you want to do and finding what meaning and purpose is for you. But the research shows that there's typically 6 ways you can do this. Firstly, it's about relationships and caregiving. For many people, as I've said, purpose comes from caring for others, spending time with grandchildren, supporting a spouse or friend, or being there for family members who need you when they're going through tough times. If you have grandchildren, it ain't babysitting, it's shaping a life and building a relationship. I look really fondly about the time I spent with my granddad when I was a kid. And I think about that and think about, as I age, the purpose that I gave him, but also the amazing memories, skills, and experiences spending some quality time with my granddad had for my life. And certainly my experience when I speak to my clients is that's really important when they're thinking about the next chapter of their life. Number 2 is giving back through volunteering. Volunteering connects you to your community. And actually, all of the research shows that community well-being, and it's something we talk about a lot on What Happens Next, contributing using your decades of experience and wisdom, whether it's mentoring young people, serving at a food bank, helping at an animal shelter, or just simply raising money for a cause you believe in, is one of the most reliable paths to purpose. And the interesting thing is, on What Happens Next, we've got a free quiz you can do today to work out in a bunch of different areas of your well-being where you're strong and where, when you're thinking about the next chapter of your life, you might want to improve on. All you need to do is follow the link in the comments or click the QR code below if you're watching this on a screen and using your phone to get instant access to this free quiz that will help you work out what happens next is going to be. The next part of purpose is learning, maintaining that sense of curiosity. You can do that by taking a class, learning a language, mastering a new skill, or just reading extensively and keeping your mind engaged and thinking about the goals you want to do moving forward. Learning creates a sense of purpose and achievement for the next chapter of your life. The 4th element is creative pursuits. Perhaps it's time to pick up that hobby you abandoned decades ago. Painting, woodworking, gardening, writing, music, whatever it is. Being creative, we know, gives us purpose and is good for our brain. My wife recently took up pottery after many years of not doing it and is loving the experience of not only going to a pottery class and building some really great social connections, but using the creative elements of our brain to create stuff for our home, which I absolutely love. 5th is spiritual or philosophical exploration. For many, purpose is found through our spiritual practices, meditation, attending church services, or exploring philosophical questions about life and meaning. This can provide a sense of purpose because you're exploring something larger than yourself. 6 is physical activities with social connection. Walking groups, taking up golf, participating in a fitness class, or engaging in group activities combining physical health benefits with social connection are all stuff that provide protective factors for your brain. Anybody who knows anything about me knows that I'm loving learning paddle tennis at the minute, and that, for me, combines all of those things. Here's what's important, though. Your purpose doesn't have to be this grand goal. It doesn't have to be monumental. Actually, for most people, purpose is incremental. It's about the small steps we take towards something that is important for us. It doesn't have to impress anybody else. Actually, purpose should never be about anybody else. It should be about what you want to achieve. What matters is that it's genuine to you and it gets you out of bed in the morning with anticipation and excitement rather than dread. So today, let me give you a simple exercise. Take 15 minutes with a notebook and pen and ask yourself the following questions. What did I love doing when I was younger, before life got in the way? And how do I get back time to do more of that? When do I lose track of time? When am I in a flow state and I want to do more and more of a certain thing? What compliments do people give me? What do other people say I'm good at? And how do I use those skills to move forward in my life? If I had unlimited time and resources, how would I spend a Tuesday morning? And what breaks my heart about the world? And what tiny step could I take to look at contributing positively to incrementally fix that thing? All of those questions might give you a flavour of what your purpose is. And remember, this isn't a one-time thing. Revisiting these questions and thinking about purpose consistently, I'd suggest, is probably one of the important things to do. So all of the cognitive decline diseases as we age do feel like a threat we can't control. But the research is interesting. Whilst it doesn't give us all of the puzzle, and there's a genetic and lifestyle element to all of these things, finding purpose and meaning in our life is a real interesting way to provide an element of protection to the next chapter of our lives as we start to think about cognitive decline. You don't need a prescription. You don't need expensive treatments. All you need is curiosity and an insight about what matters to you. I reckon there's 2 additional videos, if you are curious, that you'll benefit from watching next. In this video, I talk about why I believe being kind should be an integral part of your what happens next plan and how it relates to your purpose. And in this video, I talk about Stoicism and what Stoic philosophies we can think about today that applies in our journey when we're thinking about what happens next. Hopefully that's useful. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you on the channel soon. Hopefully that one was useful too. In this video, I want to talk about navigating life's biggest transitions with confidence and how to rethink the next chapter of your life in a way that works really well for you. Run the tape. Traditional conversations about the next chapter of our lives are typically about slowing down. We're told that the aspiration is to relax more and ease into the next chapter of our lives. And I get it. After years of hard work, you probably do want to spend a bit more time doing the stuff you love with the people you love and like. But here's the paradox. All the evidence points to the fact that we need way more than relaxation to live a happy next chapter of our lives. We need a purpose. We need meaning. We need to feel we add value to the world. We benefit from experiencing more awe in our lives. Also, if you've got way more time than the next chapter of your lives, I believe your 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond could be the era where you not only spend more time doing what you love, but also doing the things you're most passionate about and proud of. So there's an amazing opportunity, but there's also a problem. So, in this video, I want to break down the 7 elements of your life I'd recommend you focus on as you approach the next chapter to make sure it's the most happiest and most productive era of your life. You haven't got to look that far to find examples of individuals who have started working on and achieving amazing things in their 50s, 60s and way beyond. After all, Da Vinci was no spring chicken when at 61 he painted the Mona Lisa. Tolkien didn't publish The Lord of the Rings until he was in his early 60s. And Benjamin Franklin drafted the US Constitution with the other founding fathers at the ripe old age of 81. Now, your aspirations might not be to draft documents used to govern a country, publish a fantasy classic, or paint a masterpiece, although in my honest opinion, I think the Mona Lisa is a little overrated compared to other amazing works of art. But regardless of your aspirations, I think I can provide a bit of insight. Now, I've been fortunate enough to work with clients who have gone on to live a successful next chapter of their lives. I've also read hundreds of books on this particular subject and got the opportunity to interview some amazing people for the What Happens Next YouTube channel. And here's what I learned. 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond can be your happiest but also most productive, if you want it to be, era of your life. But there's some elements that we need to be aware of. So here's the 7 elements I believe it takes to live not only the happiest, but also the most productive period of your life in your 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond. Well, as a little side note here, I'm not talking about productivity for productivity's sake. That's, in my opinion, is pointless. What I am talking about is working towards something that gives you purpose and you care about. That's where eudaimonic well-being comes from. And this is what I'd like for you in your next chapter of your life. Let's start with the fact that I believe, and the evidence points to, the most compelling thing you can do to have a successful next chapter of your life is start with your mindset. That starts with both a desire to be curious, not only about the world, but also about what you believe in, and a growth mindset. The individuals I see thrive in their 50s, 60s and beyond tend to view life through a lens of curiosity. They tend to approach the next chapter of their lives by asking a lot of questions and having a massive appreciation that despite building significant amounts of wisdom, experience and knowledge in their time on the planet, they've also still got a lot to learn and relearn in the next chapter of their lives. I think it's always useful to have a beginner's mindset and think about the world not from a perspective of what you've learned, but what you've still got to learn. The definitive book, I think, on this subject is a book called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. I love that book. It's so good. And if you haven't read it, I'd recommend you pick it up. And certainly, I believe many of the insights shared in this book are all about a more helpful mindset to adopt as we approach change in our lives. And that could either be retirement or whatever what happens next looks like for you. Next, let's talk about health, because I believe that one of the most important things you can do to make sure you're happy, healthy and productive in the next chapter of your life is think about health as a baseline. I know that financial planners, including me, have been guilty of talking about lifespan more than health span. But actually, the more I think of it, the more conversations we should have on not only how long we're going to live, but how long we're going to live with positive health and the ability to do the things we want to do. However, I think we need to talk about 2 important things. Firstly, if you're looking at your financial plan, it might be a good idea to spend more in the early years of your retirement when your health is good. Because actually the ability to do things both productively but also for your own enjoyment is likely to be better in your 50s, 60s and 70s than it is in your 80s or 90s. The second thing is it's also important to appreciate the role you play in maintaining health span and positive physical health for as long as possible. And the good news is wherever you are today, you can make progress. I'd recommend you lift weights, play paddle tennis, cycle, run, walk. I'd recommend you eat well, focus on getting better sleep, get a relatively regular health check organised so that you can make sure you maintain that well-being. Also, get support and help when you need it. I know that my experience with physical health is doing something social, either in a exercise class or on the paddle tennis court, makes maintaining my physical ability a hell of a lot easier. The right route for you might be something different. It might be to employ a personal trainer, but accountability and knowing that you, because we're social animals, we're going to engage more with that fitness journey if there's other people involved, is the key element. The key thing here is to focus on what you can do to maintain and improving physical health for the remainder of your life. So you've got as much chance as possible to live the life you truly deserve for as long as you can. I know that often maintaining physical health, particularly when you haven't done it previously, can feel like hard work. And that's because it is. But my experience through the conversations I've had with clients, conversations I've had with fitness experts on what happens next, and the experiences from my life tell me that hard work then allows you to live the life you truly want. I also think it's important to talk about friendships. One of the most powerful predictors of happiness in later life isn't wealth, career success, or even health. It's relationships. The famous Harvard study of adult development, which tracked people for over 80 years, found that strong social bonds were the greatest factor, the single greatest factor, for living both a longer and happier life. I personally think this is an area a lot of people underestimate. Leaving work can sometimes mean losing a whole network of colleagues and friends. And if you don't intentionally rebuild these connections, often loneliness can creep in. So it's worth asking yourself, who do I want to spend more time with? What friendships need rekindling? And where could I find new circles of people who share my interests? One of the biggest areas a lot of new retirees suffer from is that lack of purpose. And this is why I want to talk about in this video productivity and regaining that purpose through working on doing something you love. And it's why it's so important to examine and think about what purpose means to us in the next chapter of our lives. For decades, if you're like most people, your sense of purpose was probably wrapped up in your career. Your work gave you structure, identity, and a sense of contribution. And when that stops, many people find themselves asking, who am I now? Or, as a client once put it to me, when he was deliberating whether to finish a job he hated, despite me telling him he had enough money, when he looked me in the eye and I asked him, why haven't you stopped work yet? His answer was, Chris, who am I if I'm not that? Identity is such an interesting thing. And actually, our identity often gives us purpose. But if we're thinking about the next chapter of our lives, maybe it's time to redefine that purpose. And it's interesting, purpose in the next chapter doesn't need to be grand or world-changing. For some, it's volunteering, mentoring, or creating something new. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday who told me that they've found purpose in their life by looking after their grandkids. You know, that's something that they wanted to do when they stopped work because they understood and appreciated building memories with those grandchildren was really important. When you're clear on purpose, or you're making little experiments to work out what purpose is to you, life can feel less like drifting and more like steering. You want to be in control of your future so that you can decide your best what happens next picture. When I think about my purpose, I think it includes a bunch of things. That includes being a good dad, a decent husband, and adding value to my clients in my role as a financial planner. However, it also includes doing these videos, because what I want to do is share with more people ideas and concepts that can help you and people like you plan and prepare for the next chapter of your lives. That's why I'd love for you to do me a favour. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, like this video, and leave a comment below with your thoughts about the things that make sure that you're going to have the best next phase of your life ever. And I would love to see them. And it would really help getting the messages we share on what happens next out to more people. Next, I want to talk about money as a tool instead of a goal. Here's what my 20 plus years of experience as a financial planner and now a chartered financial planner comes in. Money does matter. It does have an impact into the quality of our lives. It often buys freedom, security and choices, but it should never be the end goal, only the thing that enables us to live the life you want. Too many people either obsess about having enough without defining for them what enough means, or they avoid thinking about money, or they hope for the best. And let me tell you through experience, none of these approaches work. The real question I'd ask yourself is, what do you want money to do for you? Do you want to travel more? Do you want to support your extended family? Do you want to invest in experiences or invest money in starting a new business as a personal project? Do you want to leave a legacy for the people you really care about? Clarity here is essential. Working out what you want the money as a tool to do to improve your life then allows you to take the right steps forward. And because once you know what you want the money to do, financial planning stops being about the numbers and starts being about the possibilities the money can give you in this next chapter of your life. One of the most overlooked but powerful drivers of eudaimonia well-being, how to make sure we fill our eudaimonia bucket, is making sure we're fulfilled when we contribute. Simply the sense that we want to give back, we want to help others, and it makes us feel good. Again, this doesn't mean to be philanthropy on a grand scale. Contribution could be mentoring young generations, sharing your expertise in a part-time role, volunteering for a local cause, or supporting your community in small but meaningful ways. And then there's legacy. Not just the financial legacy of what you leave behind, but the stories, values and lessons that live on in others because of you. I'd suggest that in this chapter of your life, you ask yourself a really pertinent question. What do I want people to remember about me, particularly for the work that I'm going to do in the next 10 to 20 years? Because here's the thing. Legacy is not just what happens after you die. It's also about the impact you create while you're still here. I'm personally thinking a lot about community at the minute, including how I help people navigate the next chapter of their lives. And actually, we've got something special launching soon, early next year, to support people to do that. Now, we're not publishing much on it at the minute, but there is a waiting list. And if you'd like to join the waiting list, feel free to check the description below with a link, or simply, if you're watching this on your phone, not on a big screen, tap that QR code. But you can also find us at www.whathappensnext.life. The aim is to launch this brand new support solution for people like you early in 2026. So join the waiting list and you can find more when we release it. I've left my most contentious point, I believe anyway, until last. But I think it's really important. To thrive in the next chapter of your life, remember you're going to die. This might sound a bit morbid at first, but hear me out. The ancient Stoic philosophers had a practice known as memento mori, which literally means remember you must die. And further from being depressing, what it actually meant is it inspired people to live their lives more fully. Here's the paradox. When we confront the reality of our limited time, we tend to stop wasting it. Think about it. How many of us postpone our dreams, delay our passions, or put off what really matters to us because we think we'll get to it later? The truth is, none of us know how much later we've got. Marcus Aurelius put it most pertinently when he wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say and think." It's a really sobering and scary reality. But it's also a good one because it frees you to live the life you truly want. Let that sink in. If you stop living your life by default and start living by design, how does that look? You can take more risks, you can love more deeply, you can forgive more easily, and prioritise the things that give you meaning you truly want to do instead of simply distracting you. So in the next chapter of your life, and as you approach that, ask yourself, if this year was my last year, what would I do? What would make it a period of time that I'd be really proud of living in? If this month was my last month, how would I spend it? And if today was my last day, what would I regret not doing? That simple reflection done daily can really transform not only how you experience your next chapter, but also the legacy you leave behind. And I think the old retirement model is actually a bit broken. And in this video, I talk about why the old retirement model is broken and what you can do personally to make sure you don't fall in that retirement trap. And also, if you want to think about mindset, and my mindset, having a growth mindset and a sense of curiosity is so important in your life, in our lives. This video will talk about that in a bit more depth. That's it for today. Hopefully that's been insightful. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you on the channel soon. Hopefully that was useful. And in this video, if you want to carry on the journey of learning about what happens next for you, in this video, I share the insights into Warren Buffett's recent retirement and why you should take advice of Warren Buffett and learn from what he shared in his recent retirement letter. And in this video, I share the amazing insights of Alex Key, where he talks about legacy, succession, and life after this chapter, and entering the next chapter in a way that's compelling, powerful and enjoyable. Hopefully that's useful. Have a lovely day, and I will see you on the channel soon.